This is Autism Points of View by Autism Speaks. I'm Felipe Maya. As our understanding of autism grows, researchers are finding that the way we diagnose autism may be biased. They're also beginning to find that gender fluidity may be more prevalent in people with autism than the general population. In this episode, we'll dive into both of these topics through the experiences of 3 autistic advocates who have one thing in common. They were all diagnosed late. A growing body of research is confirming what some in the autism community already know, that autism in girls manifests differently than in boys. And since diagnostic tools were developed to fit a pattern of autism that was predominantly based on boys, in some cases, autism in girls may be missed.
I officially got an autism diagnosis when I was 16 years old.
Bridget Rankowski, autistic educator and circus performer.
I ended up seeing a provider who referred me as a PDD-NOS, which is pervasive diagnostic disability not otherwise specified, because he said that he had never seen a woman on the autism spectrum, and I wasn't going to be the first autistic woman that he gave the label to.
I was in my early 40s when I received my diagnosis.
Valerie Paradis, Autism Speaks Vice President of Services and Supports.
And I had been wanting to pursue that for some time, but was hesitant.
I was 19 when I got my diagnosis.
Kirsten Lynn Smith, autism advocate.
Though I sometimes like to say 18 to 19 because it took a year to get through all the insurance hoops to get the official assessment. But I started seeking it at 18 and I got the paperwork around my 19th birthday.
A 2018 article from the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders points out that because some girls with autism may have little or no language delays and can appear to have few challenges with social skills, they go undiagnosed. Valerie, Kirsten, and Bridget told me finally getting their diagnosis was life-changing.
After my diagnosis, things changed dramatically for me personally as well as professionally. And it did take several years for me to adjust as well as those around me. I can just state that sort of generally. Personally, I opened a door to looking at aspects of myself that needed my attention pretty desperately. It also opened a door to seeking more targeted support in therapy and sensory-related supports. I was suddenly in a place where I could now advocate for my sensory differences instead of apologize or hide them or feel like I wasn't somehow living up to what was needed or expected in a number of environments. And, as a child, that was really difficult.
So my autism diagnosis was by far the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, like hands down. That especially identity-wise, it meant that I had gone my whole life knowing that everywhere I went, everyone hated me for no reason. I didn't know why. Everything I did was somehow wrong, even when I tried my absolute best. And there were things that I couldn't do that people thought that I should be able to do. They didn't believe me that I couldn't do these things. I didn't believe myself. I thought I wasn't trying hard enough, that something was wrong. And so getting a diagnosis meant that I realized that nothing was wrong with me, that I was a perfectly normal autistic person. And there's a whole community and culture of people out there that are the same way and maybe can't just open their mouths and say whatever comes to mind.
I think one of the things that helped me, and I know that's helped others when they get the diagnosis, is they finally understand that they're not wrong, that they're not broken. And especially when I was diagnosed about 15 years ago, there still was not a lot of information about girls and women on the autism spectrum. So it was still a very new frontier for people.
Girls with autism may also mask or camouflage their autism. Broadly speaking, this means they research and mimic the behaviors of their neurotypical peers in order to blend in socially.
Yes, masking and camouflaging is a term that is sometimes used in this community where you quite literally mask as someone else or as, I don't want to say not disabled, but not as impacted by your disability. So it's the ability to maybe go and do paperwork, go to school, go to your job, look like you have everything going on and everything handled, when behind the scenes, it takes such extreme energy to put on that mask, and who you are inside, you're sometimes afraid of the reaction you get from whether it's coworkers, family, just the general public. So a lot of women, as well as other individuals who may be non-binary, you have to try to resolve the masking and remove some of the internalized ableism, which does impact us on a day-to-day basis.
So yeah, the masking is something that, as one ages, can actually become a really difficult burden. And as a person on the spectrum, you may not even know you're doing it. You may not be aware that you're doing it because you've been doing it for so long, and not aware that other people aren't doing that. But I was doing all kinds of things that was requiring a lot of energy to just sort of maintain a face at school that wasn't humiliating and sort of ostracizing. I also spent a lot of time alone, and I would do this kind of what my friend Stephen Shore calls delayed echolalia, where I would review social interactions I had with people at school earlier in the day and speak the words out loud that I said and try to remember what they said to me, because I was extremely anxious about saying something wrong or something that would be perceived as weird.
Resources tailored for girls can be harder to find, simply because right now, boys are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed than girls.
Well, the current statistics on ratio of boys and girls and women to men is something that many of us who are women, and many men on the spectrum too, feel will change with time. Another concern that's emerging among researchers and just in the community at large is that the very tools we have to diagnose autism may indeed include some bias toward diagnosing males over females. And so there's much greater attention right now in the research community at looking at, subject sample size in studies, numbers of men, numbers of women, numbers of boys, number of girls who are recruited for studies, and also complete sort of reevaluation of what kinds of questions do we ask, say if it's a survey, or what kinds of things are we looking for when we're conducting a study. So I think that people with autism can do a lot to help shape where that direction may take us in study design, as well as in how we present the numbers in terms of male to female ratio.
Well, they used to discuss autism in terms of masculine and feminine brain. And again, those are very gendered lines, which, as we all know, the gender spectrum is not as binary as people thought 300, 400 years ago, at least in Western civilization. So I think there has been a ongoing conversation in trying to gender autism in specific ways of how girls act, how boys act, and again, the conversation's been towards those gears. How society has framed autism in terms of gender, we are slowly opening the door of being like, yes, you are talking about this, and let's discuss gender as a spectrum, how like autism is a spectrum. Let's make sure that there is acknowledgement of all the people and all the places on the spectrum. So I think that one of the dangers of basing things solely on scientific research, which